What's up, everybody? How is it going out there in the YouTube land? Shut off them for just a hot minute. How's everybody doing? I will turn these two back on in just a second. Somebody else will be here in a little bit. Had to take care of some business. So, yeah. We're going to try to do this. Now, I'm not making any promises, but we will talk about Trish and Lita and the rivalry. We may not remember some things, but that's okay. It's our memories of Trish and Lita. I'm not even going to moderate. Let's just talk. I think we should just talk about it instead of going step by step by step by step. Now, it'll probably be like an hour show, maybe even less. I don't know. I know Heather said she wasn't doing her show. She's really tired. Wendy was being a shit last night. So, that being said, I'm going to bring my other two people on here. We'll have a third here in a little bit. I'm going to bring on Johnny and Bobbit. How's it going, guys?
What's up, my friend?
I thought you were going to say something else.
I am now 100% kosher.
You're 100% what?
Kosher.
Kosher. Okay.
You ain't kosher. What the fuck? How are you fucking kosher?
Because I just am.
Would you turn on the light? Sorry. And Heather will be here. She's not on camera, but I'm sure this is like Lita is one of her favorite, if not her favorite, competitors of all time.
Her and Luna Vachon were my role models growing up.
So she'll have some input. But I wanted to try this again because last time we ended up talking about fucking goddamn Charlotte and Becky. I'm going to say this now. That feud, Becky, Charlotte, Ronda, holds no candle to these two. Sorry. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, like, I think this is my kind of take on it. The difference between the two is Lita's and Trish's feud, I think, was a little bit more meaningful.
Yes.
Because of what it led to. Like, you know, the first time they main evented in a Monday Night Raw, and I know that's like the only point that I really ever go back to, but that was a very significant moment that realistically, I don't think WWE gives enough credit for.
Right.
You know, because that was a very significant moment for them, and it was based on what their feud was really became about.
Yep.
On who was the best.
Yep.
And that to me really sold the feud. But we talked a little bit about it off air, and I'm not. Any of us on the call, I'm not talking about us because clearly we do not think this way.
And I'm going to before you. I know where he's going with this. If any of you think what Johnny's going to say, and I already know what he's going to say, if any of you think like that, you need to reevaluate your outlook on wrestling. I'm just saying that now. Go ahead, Johnny.
So this was my thing because I watched the deal about them, and you know, even on the episode they brought up a couple of things, and I think a lot of the reason why they don't get the credit that they deserve is not any of us on the call, but I think the majority of the casual fan base only remembers them for two things. They remember Lita for Matt Hardy and Edge, and Trish, anytime I ever hear something about Trish, it's not about how good of a wrestler she was. She was a fantastic wrestler.
She wasn't very good at the beginning, but she
got there, though.
She got there.
But that's not what people talk about whenever I hear somebody talk about Trish Stratus. The thing I hear about the most about Trish Stratus is the barking like a dog incident.
Mm-hmm.
That is the number one thing I hear about the most.
Right.
And that's what's sad about it, is that it shouldn't be that way. That's not what they should be remembered for. Unfortunately, one of them, especially when it comes to Trish, that's a very unfortunate thing. Because she had, well, my stance on that is they shouldn't have done it, and they should have handled that differently. But at the end of the day, she did agree to do it.
Yep. And that's with a lot of this stuff that happens in WWE. In fact, all of it. I will say this, that including the women, they can't come back, bitch, piss, and moan about it because ultimately they signed off on it. That being said, is it right? No. The WWE should know better. They shouldn't need to have to show tits and ass, or you know what I mean, bra and panties matches just to get the women over, because it's not needed. Trish and Lita evolutionized, and I use that word. That was an actual evolution, was Trish and Lita. Their feud was an evolution of women's wrestling, because women's wrestling was taken a little more seriously with their feud. And then thereafter, their feud translated into girls like Bayley, like Sasha, like Becky, to want, and Paige, and all those guys to want to wrestle.
Right.
Today,
well,
if it was not for them two, women probably would still be doing independent bra and panties matches, or that fucking crap we seen with the fucking lady in the fucking tampon shoving it down somebody's throat. That's the kind of shit that we'd be getting today if it was not for Trish and Lita actually wrestling inside of a ring.
I think you can honestly make the argument that particular from then on when the Trish and Lita rivalry started, a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I think from that time all the way up, and I know you're not a fan of her, but I'm not speaking specifically to her as the wrestler. I'm talking about that time period. That time between the Trish and Lita feud and right around towards the end of AJ Lee's tenure in WWE, I think was the best time in the women's division. To me,
did we lose you, Johnny?
Are
you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to and it's not that when I speak in terms of, to me, that was the best time. That was the most memorable time for me.
Okay.
If you were asking me today, like, what's memorable for you, nothing really for me is that memorable.
No, I think that's the feud was consistent that you aren't going to remember. I mean, the most that you're going to remember is from their feud is the Monday Night Raw that they main evented. But I would say that, and I'm guilty of this too. I mean, I don't know that much about the feud. I mean, Heather knows more about the feud than I do. That's why she ran the show last time. But we ended up talking about Becky and Charlotte, and I'm trying to avoid that. Because the reason I say that is people want to compare the two feuds. And you can't. You can't justifiably compare the two. The feud between Trish and Lita had meaning behind it. This feud has no fucking meaning behind it. Not anymore, anyway.
Right.
But there was a reason why these two feuded for, what was it? 3 years? 4 years?
Yeah. It was a long time.
Yeah.
When they first came in, if I remember right, Lita came in first.
Yes. The
But
exact-
but Lita, and I'll get to that in a sec, because Lita came in first. But when you watch the Rivalries thing, Trish said that she didn't think, oh my God, this woman knows how to wrestle. I'm never going to make it to the show. Lita was the opposite. Oh my God, she's one of the most beautiful women in the world, and the way the WWE is, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to get showcased.
Yeah.
When Lita first got hurt is when their feud, they weren't really friends. They knew each other, but they weren't friends. When Lita came back from her injuries, when their feud started, that's when they actually became friends, and their chemistry between these two was so good. That's what made this feud probably better than any of the feuds you're going to see in the women today, because their chemistry is so good. And again, it was a Rock Austin kind of feud where you could branch off, and other feuds started because of them two. If I remember right, didn't Trish have somebody on her side and feuding with
TNA.
Lita?
It was TNA.
Well, not. I'm
And then
talking
Trish.
about women. I'm talking about women.
Oh.
Mickey James?
Well, Mickey James. Well, Mickey James came in as a possessed fan, but yeah, you could say I could see that Lita got or Trish that feud. Yeah, I could see that. Heather.
Well, that was the thing. There was a whole thing that when Lita was injured and she left, Trish stayed behind and worked her ass off. When Lita came back from injury, Trish was being attacked by Victoria and I think Mickey James, and that created the tag team between Trish and Lita to go against them.
Okay.
I think that's how that storyline went, if
Okay.
I remember it right.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. I should let you take over. You know more about this feud than I do. And I'm looking at Heather. You want to sit here? I'm going to let Heather sit here because she knows more about the feud than I do. And honestly,
GP.
it's a women's feud, so the other person that's going to be joining us is Gina. I'm trying to drag it out so she can get here because I know she's got a lot she wants to say.
No, I'm sure.
Go ahead.
Oh. Hi, folks.
Hi,
Everybody
Heather.
here.
Thank God you're here, because this will probably help me.
Exactly.
Probably, yeah. So when Lita got injured the first time,
Right.
and she went out, Trish stayed behind and got better at her wrestling, which is what then sparked the idea of getting Lita and Trish together when she returned from injury. Which her first injury, if I remember right, was her knee. How you doing, Gina?
Get in here. She's added to the call.
She's here.
We have
Hi,
Gina.
Gina. I thought she was in the chat.
Okay.
Hello.
So I'm right. Her first injury was her knee injury, right?
Lita?
Yes.
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the knee, then her neck, and then she injured her knee again, I believe.
Yep. And I know there was a major neck surgery, or neck injury, but then she tweaked her neck several times too.
After that, yeah. And the
Yeah.
Hurricane Ranas did not help that, and her doctor kept telling her, stop doing them, but she's like, no, but I have to.
Right? Well, that was her signature move. So, I mean, I don't know. She still does it to this day, and I still think she's going to break her neck all over again.
Yeah, the whole problem with that is the way she explained it, because it first happened when she was on the episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the neck injury first occurred, actually, for those who didn't know.
Just so crazy. I mean, she's in the ring for doing all this crazy shit, and then she gets injured on the set of a movie. or a TV
Exactly.
show.
Isn't that about when Lita first got injured? Isn't that also about the time they started to take women's wrestling a little bit more seriously?
Yes, they started giving women a little bit more time in the ring with regular matches, not the bra and panties, not the pillow fights, not the Thanksgiving pudding matches. or the
Oh,
mud
God.
matches.
Oh, those were horrible.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't even remember a turkey.
I don't either.
It's just.
It was one of those matches that at the end it was the cat and somebody else involved in it, but it was definitely like a pudding match or it's supposed to be like a mud match or something like that. At
Yeah,
the
I
end of
think
it,
it was
Lillian
a
Garcia
chocolate
got
pudding.
thrown into.
Yeah,
And she
Oh.
walked away in a separate private interview. She sat there. She walked away like licking her fingers, like I love my job.
Right? Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, it was chocolate pudding.
Yes. But back to Trish and Lita.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, I know I asked JP this question. I brought up my point that I was talking about earlier.
Mhm.
What is your take on that thought process? Is that again? I'm clarifying.
Taking myself out of it. Yes, I understand.
Taking everybody, and so I'll pose this question to Gina as well. Do you girls think that a lot of the reason that Lita and Trish's feud is not as talked about in wrestling history and amongst other shows is because that's not really what they're known for? The majority, because it seems like for me, again, I'm just reiterating,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that Lita is known for, or when I listen to other podcasts or something like that, it's usually one of the first things that always comes up is Matt Hardy, Lita, and Edge, and that whole debacle.
Yeah.
And with Trish, whereas Trish was one of my favorite female wrestlers, but anytime I hear about Trish, the thing that I always hear about, one of the first things that always comes up is the dog barking incident.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that is a contributing thing to why they don't get a lot of recognition for this feud?
I don't know if it's necessarily a case that they don't get a whole lot of recognition because when you everybody that talks about the women's revolution, it always comes back to Trish and Lita. You know, they're kind of the initial starters of it, and then Paige took over from there. But
do you think it's more of a casual problem, though?
I do, yes.
Yes, casual problem, absolutely.
Okay, because when it comes down to when you ask the casual fans, of course, that's the first thing they're going to think of because that's the first thing they went back and watched.
Because, see, like with me, the thing that really sticks out for me is, like, from my knowledge of what I remember of the feud, the one thing that sticks out for me, and the first thing I go to when I hear Trish and Lita, is first ever women's main event Monday Night Raw.
Right.
That's the first thing I go to. But I do notice that amongst people that's not usually what the first thought is.
No, because a lot of it's a lot of the casual fans that the first thing they went back and watched for Trish was her barking like a dog for Vince McMahon, or that whole thing, that whole storyline spanning
with Linda McMahon and
Yeah.
I think I completely agree with what Heather just said because, like, if you're a casual fan, you're not going to be watching. A lot of casual fans, they go back and they watch like the pay-per-views on the network, right?
Yep.
But a lot of them don't watch like the Raws and the SmackDowns, so you're not seeing. Yes, even though Lita was very well known for being with the Hardy Boys, she kicked some major ass, and this was like man ass that she was kicking.
Right.
On a weekly basis, and that kind of gets foreshadowed a little bit.
Right.
See, this is what I was telling JP earlier, and if I'm dead wrong about this, please tell me if I'm wrong. I always think that Trish's was an unfortunate circumstance because of what WWE did with her. Lita, I think that was mostly Lita.
As far as what exactly, though?
As far as why there is that stigma with the casual fans.
Because they're beautiful women?
No, because...
He's talking about why that the casual fans really only know of them as they are because of watching those feuds. Um,
Like, okay, like the reason why I say Lita, that was on Lita, because she cheated on Matt Hardy.
right. But you also got to look at it this way, in the fact of what it breaks down to is she, as in her own words, she fell out of love with Matt Hardy because of things that he was doing backstage.
Yes. Well,
Right,
and you also have to remember that Matt Hardy was injured.
Right.
At the time, so like he, and this actually came up. I think it might have been in one of the Hardy documentaries or something. I had watched it, no, I'm sorry, it was the Edge documentary. But anyways, Matt Hardy had been injured, so Lita needed a traveling partner because she traveled with Matt all the time, and she ended up traveling with Edge. And it started out as complete platonic friendship. They were traveling together to get from one point A to point B. And over time, their relationship grew while her and Matt's relationship grew distant. Now, should she have cheated on him? No. But should that define her? No, because people fall out of love all the time. Unfortunately, it just happens.
And of course, you gotta look at what today's society is.
Right.
It's all social media. Oh, I'm gonna be sexting with this person while I'm sleeping in bed with this person.
Exactly. So like if this would have happened now, I don't think it would have been nearly as much of a big deal
Exactly.
as it was back then. Because back then it was still kind of, I don't necessarily want to say Susie Homemaker type thing, but in the 90s, the idea of like the
You were
family
expected to stay with one
sanctuary was,
person.
yes, like the family sanctuary idea, like you needed to find a husband or you needed to find a wife in order to be happy. That was still very
Yeah.
prominent in the 90s and early 2000s. It was still very prominent. And nowadays it's more like, if you want to get married, but if you don't, don't.
Exactly. Now it's more freelance.
Exactly.
But
I still partial to thinking the old way, but
does at least what is at least the question that I'm posing make a lot of sense?
It does. It does.
does.
And also when it comes down to it, again, that's also the casual fans that are also the younger fans.
Mhm.
So it's they only see it as, well, Lita opened her legs. Well, Edge was there too.
Exactly. And Edge, while Lita was being torn to shreds, Edge was being catapulted to the top. Because you got to remember, this happened right around the time when Edge was actually being pushed so hard for that world championship.
That's true.
And
between
instead
that
of
and the fact that he was also married at the time, but
right,
fell in
so
love with Lita.
Yeah.
But that's never mentioned.
Right.
Just saying.
I think in the end they both figured out that they didn't make a mistake necessarily. I mean, yes, they cheated on their partners, yes, but
they made the
like
mistake of carrying the storyline into the WWE and letting the WWE expand.
And a lot of that was actually, you can't bring that back to Lita either, or even Edge, because a lot of that was Matt Hardy, because he was so angry, which rightfully so.
Of course.
That's true.
But he was so angry that he could not contain his emotions backstage. So
it became very real very quick, and unfortunately.
I mean, ultimately, I know we're getting off topic again, but that's fine.
No, we're staying within the realm.
The feud itself was signed off on by all three.
Right.
And Bruce Pritchard talked about this. It got real when the feud, and I think it was frustration because WWE just kept shoving it down their throat and every week and making Matt do shit, and it kind of pissed him off, and that pushed Matt over the edge.
Well, they were making him actually wrestle Edge for a long time, which is a bad move. And anybody would know that that is a bad move.
Because that could very easily turn into a real fight rather than a wrestling match.
Exactly, so, and you really couldn't fire Matt if it did, because what are you going to do? I mean, you forced him to wrestle a dude that literally just stole his longtime girlfriend.
Right.
And as Aaron said here, Lita said on Lillian's podcast that she was harder on herself than anybody else was.
And she said the same thing. I want to say it was one of Edge's DVDs that they had interviewed her about the whole debacle. And Edge even said the same thing, like, because Edge felt horrible. Him and Matt were really good friends. like they were really, really good friends, and they both said this is not something that we set out to happen. So in terms of defining Lita's career based on the whole Edge scenario, I think that that's just kind of, not to sound sexist because I don't mean it this way, but I think that that's kind of history repeating itself, because if you think back on all the times when like shit happened with between a man and a woman, who gets the blame? 90% of the time it's the woman. Like if a man and a woman cheat on their partners, it's the woman gets the blame. I mean, the man does too, but the woman more. And it's not so much like that anymore. A little bit maybe, but not so much anymore. But back then it was very much like that. So I don't know.
It was kind of a roundabout way to answer your question there, Johnny.
It's okay, but because I noticed, like, even like the reason why I brought up the question,
right,
is because the last time we were talking about this, it was very hard for us to stay on topic on this.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, even though we all can agree that we don't think that way, I sometimes wonder if, because of those stigmas that were there, that's what makes it hard.
Yeah. I guess I would agree with that. It does make it hard just with the stigmas, and like we said before, the casual fans don't help matters at all, because all they hear is, oh, Edge and Lita had an affair.
And all they look at is the pay-per-views. They don't go back and watch the old Monday Night Raws, the old SmackDowns.
And a lot of Trish's best stuff was on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown as well, so like they're missing a huge chunk out of that story.
Yeah. And again, if it wasn't for Trish and Lita being the first women to main event on Monday Night Raw, we wouldn't have as many main events for the women that we have now.
Exactly.
It's true.
And frankly,
exactly. I'm sorry? Go ahead.
And frankly, it's just one of those things of, it's sad to see with today's fandom.
Mm-hmm.
You say you're all about this business, but you don't want to go back and learn about it. I mean, come on.
Exactly. It's in my opinion, if you want to talk about the way wrestling is right now, you almost have to go back and you have to watch, not necessarily all of the Attitude Era, but I'd say definitely from like 98 on.
Mm-hmm.
You
at
have
the very
to
least, yeah.
Yes, especially if you're talking about the women's, evolution and how they got to where they are today and all of this stuff. I know WWE, they've done, like 24 specials and shit, but they don't cover nearly all of it, because you almost got to go back and you got to watch those Raws and those SmackDowns where you see the women going from having bra and panty or bikini contests in the ring to, if you watch it, you can literally see where the momentum starts to shift.
Well, I think it's two parts. You not only have to go back and watch it to see where they came from, you also kind of go back in it and understand that what you perceive to be socially acceptable to today was not the case back then.
Right.
And so you have to basically go in with the mindset, you have to view it for what it is.
Oh yeah, like if like, let's say an SJW goes back and watches, okay, not even an SJW, let's say a feminazi goes back and watches Raw from like 1998, they're gonna be flipping their shit, because, oh my God, how dare they degrade these women, blah blah blah. Which, yeah, it was a little degrading, but in the same sense, those women were being paid very handsomely and they knew what they were doing. And a lot of them were actively trying to change it, but nobody, for some odd reason, nobody was able to actually make that change happen until Trish and Lita.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting back onto, I know we went off a tangent, but it does tie. That's the thing. This all ties back in. Now, what I have trouble remembering is what actually started the feud to begin with.
It was the tag teams. It was Team Extreme versus TNA.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it was the two men. It was the four men against each other, and then eventually the women got involved.
She interfered in a match, and Lita stopped her from interfering, I think.
Something like that,
Yep.
right?
And then them two started fighting on the outside, and Vince was like,
If you two
"Well,
want to fight,
No, Bruce Pritchard was like, we got something here, let's do something with it," and they did. So Bruce Pritchard's my favorite fucking booker of all time. He's my favorite producer. I'm glad WWE brought him back.
You know, and the thing is that a lot of the shit that we fell in love with within the end of the Attitude Era into the Ruthless Aggression era, the stuff that we were like blown away by, Bruce Pritchard was around for all of it. And most of it, Bruce Pritchard was the one that caught it and was like, hey, this is lightning in a bottle.
right?
Yep. Bruce Pritchard, and that's why Bruce Pritchard is back. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, hopefully, I'm not too. I know that this is completely off subject, but just real quick, I'm not too fond of the whole Dana Warrior doing the women's writing.
I'm not.
I actually
really not.
want.
you can kind of see it's not working.
Right. I really want Bruce Pritchard to take back over that and give us that new Trish and Lita. Like, that's what we need. That's what we need in order to get the women's revolution started again, because let's face it, it's dull. It's dead.
Yeah,
as of right now.
I am done, and I said this on Tuesday. I am done wholeheartedly. There's nothing more no more story they can tell, except the same damn promo over and over and over again every fucking Tuesday and Monday. That's it. That's all you're gonna get. But with Trish and Lita, Bruce Pritchard is the one that said, we got something here, let's do something with it. Vince McMahon is like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, look. And he said, all right. And they ran with it, and look at it today.
Trish started getting her training because she was just a sports model at the start of all of this.
Which is insane to believe that, because, I mean, it was what, like
so
maybe
quickly.
a year? Yeah, it was maybe a year or two that she was actually training to be a wrestler. And Trish, in my book, is still one of the best female wrestlers around. I mean, even you have women these days that have been training for 10 plus years, and they don't have they can't touch Trish.
Exactly.
But I think with Trish and Lita, with their feud, it helped a lot. I mean, their feud alone was just great, but it helped a lot with them that you had the tag teams feuding at the same time. So it never really had a dull moment, because whether you were seeing a match with just Trish and Lita, or you were seeing a match where Trish and Lita were out with the tag teams, they would get into it, and it was always exciting.
And then from there, you had Lita sitting there interrupting in the ladder matches. The very first TLC match had her fighting against Spike Dudley and giving Rhino a Hurricane Rana. I mean, come on, Rhino. He's almost 300 fucking pounds, and she is 130 pounds.
Right.
I mean, so it's just one of those things.
Yeah. For me, I think Trish's career catapulted after. I would really, I hate to say this, but I think that her career really catapulted, not just after the Lita thing, but after the whole Vince McMahon storyline. Because I believe that happened before Trish and Lita feud, didn't it? Was that after?
It was after.
Okay. Wow, I thought for some odd reason I thought that was before. But anyways, you had the Trish and Lita feud, but then like Lita, I think that might have been right around the time when Lita hurt her knee with the Trish McMahon thing.
Yes.
But anyways, because I remember Lita wasn't on TV, because I actually just watched that pay-per-view with Linda McMahon with you guys, I think, the other night.
I think that was during her knee injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
what it was.
because even when the Hardy Boys came out for the TLC match, like Lita was nowhere in sight.
Right.
But which was very unusual because it never mattered what kind of match they were in, she was always ringside. But you know, so once Lita hurt her knee and they kind of hit the glass ceiling, so to speak, with Trish and Lita for the time being, they were still able to catapult Trish.
Yeah, that's
And
where
that-
she sparked off and went with Victoria and
Mm-hmm.
Mickey James and Tori Wilson at the time.
Right?
Yeah. I think if Lita wouldn't have injured her knee, I think that she probably would have been catapulted just as much as Trish.
I
mean,
think she
don't
would have
get-
been the first. She was the first one to get the women's championship out of the two of them.
Yes, and like, don't get me wrong, Lita, of course, she's a like amazing superstar. Everybody loves Lita, but I feel like Trish got catapulted just a little bit higher, just because of those injuries with Lita.
Yes, with the injuries and the fact that Trish had the slightly better look, I will say.
Yes,
I mean, I
Trish-
adore
Yeah.
Lita, and Lita is my idol for certain reasons, folks. But
Dude.
Trish had that. She had the more iconic look.
Yes, she had what WWE was looking for back then.
Mhm.
Like they wanted the supermodel look,
Mhm.
but yet after Trish and Lita feud happened, they realized that they also wanted the wrestler too.
Right, and they got
So
that with Trish.
she had it all, right? Lita, I was obsessed with Lita. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I was one of those little hoochies that ran around with the thong sticking out just because of Lita.
Mhm. Between that and the tattoos, that was all me.
Oh man, I didn't get my first tattoo until I was like 28. But
I was 22 when I got my first tattoo, so. But we do
Oh.
have somebody else who just joined in the call because they finally fucking got home.
Fuck that.
Mr. Arizona Time. How you doing, Trey?
Good. How are you guys tonight?
Doing good.
Boy, wait a minute. Say something, Trek.
Huh?
Trek!
Yeah.
Why does your voice sound deeper?
He finally
I
went
don't
through
know.
puberty.
Did your balls finally drop?
Did your balls finally drop?
he sounds like Trek now, but when he first came on the call, he's like, "Hey guys, how you doing?"
I
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
it's like very memorable up in this
He
bitch.
went through puberty.
In the span of 5 seconds.
Unreal.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
No, of course not. None of us can when it comes to Trek. Are you kidding?
Oh, poor Trek.
Speaking of Trek, you got anything else to add in here yet, brother?
Just that Lita was my favorite one of the two. I gravitated towards her more because she was a badass. Trish was very good at wrestling, but Lita was the one who would do all the jumps and do all the shit and stuff. And she was still one of the most beautiful women ever. She didn't give a shit. She would just kick your ass.
Yeah.
Ding.
What the hell is that?
God. Fucking random, yeah.
Well, he fucking said that with some emotion. I just had to throw a yeah in there.
Oh, God. Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
You're damn right.
No, but also at the
It's
end of the day,
true.
with these two women, you had a lot of the true actual firsts
Yes.
within the WWE. I mean, you had Lita with the first ever cage match.
Hmm.
Trek, I don't know if you can hear this, but with that statement you went with, this is for you.
I heard nothing, but yeah, you're absolutely right, Heather. They had a lot of firsts, like Lita with the first cage match. I think what was one of them?
Trish
the first,
was
like,
the first hardcore match.
yes, I was just gonna say because I knew that one of them was in a hardcore match. And then Molly Holly, of course, followed them, but they were the very first.
Well,
I
Trish
know-
was in the first hardcore match with Victoria because it was the everything but the kitchen sink. No, everything including the kitchen sink match.
Right. Yeah, I just remember when Molly Holly ran in and like stole it from Hurricane Helms or somebody. but-
Right.
But they also in the intergender matches that everybody is so afraid of these days. I mean, I know China was kind of the pioneer for the intergender matches, but right after her, the momentum kind of died down with that, and then all of a sudden here comes Trish and Lita, and neither one of them was afraid to take out any member of whatever sex. Like they didn't care whether you had a penis or vagina.
Right.
You were going down.
I have a baby staring at me. But yeah, and for fucking WWE to sit there and pull out these the first women's championship that Lita herself debuted. I wanted to smack her. It's like, honey, you were once a women's champion.
Exactly.
What happened?
When they debuted the new women's belt, they fucking sat there, the first women's championship.
Yeah, when it went
to get away from the
Divas
Divas championship belt.
Yeah.
Well, that's wording by WWE because the casual fans don't seem to fucking understand that the first evers happened a long fucking time ago.
And I think that WWE thinks that they think that they can get away with it because that wasn't WWE according to them. That was WWF.
I was gonna make mention of that.
Yes.
Well, that was WWF. This is WWE. It's the same fucking company.
It is the same fucking company, but if you think about it, the title still said WWF Women's Champion. So it is still a new title, but it's like, come on, it's the same fucking company, man.
It is. And when you have the argument of WCW and WWE, then things get a little bit more of a gray area. However, since WWE now owns everything WCW, it's the same fucking company.
Yeah, they own everything.
Otherwise, Booker T would not be able to sit there and go five-time champion. I'm sorry to tell you.
That is true.
Exactly. Yeah, like they own everything WCW. They own all of ECW.
Yep.
I'm just waiting for they have to have some sort of rights to TNA stuff.
They have to because they keep making mention of it, like Randy Orton this past week on SmackDown with bringing up Dixie Carter.
Right. And not only do they make mention of it, but with the Kurt Angle package, there was a few of those matches where he was in TNA. So it's unless they have some sort of rights to that, I can imagine that they would pay money in order to get rights to a 10-second clip.
I swear it's hilarious. I feel bad.
I know we can't stay on the topic of Trish and Lita, but unfortunately, sometimes different things get taken on.
But it all kind of
it all ties it together, honestly, because again, with bringing up the women's championship, Lita was the one who debuted it, and Lita is the one who said first women's championship. I wanted to smack her. It's like you were.
I agree. That was kind of ridiculous.
And the funny thing is, Lita back in the day, she was the very definition for me for feminism, right? Because she was just a fucking badass, and now she is the very definition of feminazi for me. I mean, for fuck's sake, she wore a Me Too movement T-shirt to what was the first pay-per-view that? Yes, yeah, she wore a Me Too, a hashtag Me Too shirt, which yes, I mean at that time it hadn't turned into the fiasco that it is now, granted, but even still, I was like, it's a little too much for me there.
Yeah.
Well, this is and it goes back to my original statement. I think that time from Trish and Lita up until about when AJ Lee left. In fact, you and me were talking about this off air.
Yeah.
Or one day that realistically, I feel like that time period was more meaningful and honestly better than what we got now. If anything, I think that the current product today, especially when it comes to women, it's not progress, it's regress.
In a lot of ways, yeah. Unfortunately,
it's not so much about what type of matches they're doing. It's more back then when it came to, and this is just my humble opinion about it. Don't at me, fucking,
Foot.
But to me, it was to me, even though I mean we gave a shit more about the women back then than we realistically do now. I mean, think off the top of your head. In the past 3 years, what feud have you really cared about? Like truly as invested as you would be with the Trish and Lita feud.
We were all pretty much invested in the very start of the Charlotte Becky feud.
That's what I was just gonna say. I was very invested in that, but not quite as much as not quite as much as Trish and Lita. But
well, and that's what I mean is that there was the thing I think that was so good about that feud in particular. It was consistent.
Yes,
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that we have a problem with nowadays is that nothing is consistent. You can't keep that momentum like they had been back in the day. And so that's why I mean by a regression is even though they're not doing the bra and panty matches, they're not really doing the valet thing anymore. It's almost just as bad.
Well, the thing is that the women today, they don't understand that you can both be sexy and badass at the same time. They always want to focus on, this one is sexy, like Lana, for instance. She's supposed to be sexy, whereas Charlotte, she's a badass, or better yet, like Ronda is a badass. They think that they have to be one or the other, and it's not even necessarily that they think that way. It's just that's how they're booked. Right. So Trish and Lita, I mean, both of them, yeah, they had heel, or like mostly Trish had the heel character, but people still absolutely loved her because they knew how to tell that story and they knew how to play both parts. They knew when to be sexy and when to turn their A game on. And that's something that most wrestlers are lacking these days.
Right. When watching the rivalries thing, Trish did say that when she made the mention. How did she mention it? I know that I'm a beautiful woman. Well, people.
Her exact words.
Oh, there you go.
Her exact words in that episode were, "This is why I wore pants most of the time. When I was wrestling, I wore pants because I wanted you to watch me wrestle. If I wanted you to look at my ass, I'd be wearing the short shorts."
Right.
Or I'd be in a bra and panties.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, you look at Lita, and she wore, like, the shirts that look pretty much like a fucking bra when she was wrestling. But yet nobody really... I don't remember a single dude, when she did a fucking moonsault off the top rope, I don't remember a single dude going, "Oh, dude, her boob almost popped out." Nobody was paying attention because she was so mesmerizing in the ring.
Right.
And these days, it's like, you don't have that. They have the sex appeal, but they don't have the charisma to go with it.
Well, the only one that does thus far are either Asuka or Ember Moon.
Well, I think Charlotte has a little bit of it, like a little touch of it, but hers is also a lot of arrogance. There's too much arrogance in there.
Well, it's because she's trying to be her father, and that's the way they are booking her, unfortunately, Charlotte.
Now, this is way off topic, but you guys mentioned something, and it brought up an interesting thought for me. Okay. Because it just dawned on me. Nowadays, if there's a nipple slip or anything like that, the internet is all over it.
Yeah.
And just going eating it up.
Exactly. I'm sorry?
Here goes my question. Or what my thought process is, I can remember back in the day when the bra and panties things was going on, but nobody really gave a shit about it.
No.
I think it's just because everybody's like so focused on it now.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it should have been done, but it's almost like because it was always kind of there.
Well, it's also the fact of with today and everything having to be PG for it to be on TV and for it to be acceptable. That we as a society have kind of regressed. I guess you can say.
Right, and so that's what I'm saying is that you had. Was it needed? No, but in all honesty, that's the kind of things that I see that I'm noticing, is that when you looked at that, yeah, they had that, but also a lot of forms, and even till this day, a lot of forms of entertainment has that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Right.
And
But you also got it, and it also comes up to a point that you made when I brought up the where was the outrage when Owen Hart broke Steve Austin's neck. Internet wasn't that big back then, so
right,
we could
and
not
I-
have
and I'm
we
pretty
just could not have seen it.
And I'm
Right.
pretty sure that back then, if the internet was such a big deal back in the day, we probably would have seen more people complaining about all the bra and panties matches.
Oh, we would have seen. Oh my God, Owen Hart needs to be fired because he broke Stone Cold Steve Austin's neck.
Or
Right.
Trish Stratus had a nip slip. Here it is, you know.
You know
Yeah.
what? Baseman and I were talking last night. Bob and I'm not sure. You might have been awake by this time, but I'm not sure. You might have fallen asleep on us. But
Again.
anyways, well, in our defense, or in his defense, it was very late.
He falls asleep at 10 o'clock.
But we were discussing that and how so many people are outraged online now, and they're calling for people's heads immediately. And it's like, if you're a true wrestling fan, then you're gonna sit back. You might be like, "What the fuck," you know, but you're not gonna immediately call for somebody to get fired because they had they accidentally hurt someone. Okay, because they're fucking wrestlers. It happens. Accidents happen. Like, their bodies are sweaty. Do you have any idea how, between all the oil that they have on and the sweat on their bodies, how slippery they have to be?
Right.
And
Me
it's
Johnny
very
were actually
easy.
talking about that before we started the show.
Well,
Yeah.
and you know, here's my thing, and I love how the WWE kind of takes the approach on this, and I wish wrestling fans would do this more. Is WWE, they may speak to a political issue, but that it's not the central. It's not the central form of topic of discussion or central form of the entertainment.
Right.
Whereas I think a lot of times us as fans, we make it that way.
Yes.
And we fall into that trap when, you know, like for the last month, we've been having this debate over, you know, the Attitude Era and the shit that the women did then versus now.
Right.
It's been a month long of debate.
Right.
Hey, and the thing is that there was, and that's kind of what leads back to my original point. There was a time when that wasn't even that was the first thought from anybody's mind.
No, because everybody understood it was wrestling.
It
Yeah.
was wrestling,
Well,
and
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
Johnny,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. No, sorry. I was just gonna say, if you take a look at when Sasha, quote unquote, hurt Paige, for instance. Newsflash to everybody out there. Paige was doomed from the start when she came back. Okay, her neck condition. If it wouldn't have been Sasha, it would have been someone. And
It
she's
could have been
actually
her slipping on ice and falling on her butt.
yes.
It
She
could
Right.
have been her bumping into a door.
exactly. She's actually really lucky that it happened when it did, because Sasha, with the way that she kicked Paige's neck, she ended up, you know, crappy flopping on the floor for about 10 minutes. But otherwise, if she would have taken a more severe bump, it could have been a lot worse. She could have been paralyzed.
For life.
You know, but yet immediately people are just calling for fucking Sasha's head. You know, whereas when Trish and Lita, when they were wrestling, and I believe Lita was wrestling Trish when she hurt her knee, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought so. Like, Lita hurt her knee, and you didn't see anybody going, "Oh my God, that Trish Stratus, she wrestles, da 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 da. You know, she needs to be fired." Nobody did that, and that's the disadvantage of the internet right now. Like, there's a lot of benefits of the internet, but there's a lot of like cons to it too.
I honestly think that if the WWE wants to use the internet, it needs to go back to just the AOL chat rooms.
Oh God, I miss those.
I do too.
I mean, what brought on mine and Johnny's conversation was the Ronda Rousey Dana Brooke thing.
Yes.
Oh my, yeah, that
Okay,
was
so
that was something.
in with Ronda Rousey, if Dana Brooke just number one, she didn't tuck her head. Number two, she's got to help with a little bit of rotation because she is dead weight.
And
So for people to sit there and shit on fucking Ronda Rousey, I mean Ronda Rousey's only 130 pounds.
Right.
She looks strong, but that doesn't mean that she can fucking just throw another 130-pound woman around. That dead weight is dead weight. She has to rotate somewhat in order for that finish to move and look fluent.
Correct.
So that's all I wanted to say on that.
yeah. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to take a step away for a minute. I gotta read my kid her books and put her to bed. So,
Okay, no problem.
but I'll be back in a few minutes.
This actually
Sure.
turned out to be a longer conversation. We went from the feud into the talking all this other shit.
Well, no,
Unfortunately, that's what happens with these episodes.
But it ties in, of course, because I mean,
It goes back. It ties right back to how
Because-
things were back then.
Right. Well, and two, I think it is. I think it is a good discussion because when you really, this has been my stance on it for probably the past year or so.
Right.
Is I think that us as fans have taken it a little bit too seriously.
Yes.
And-
These fans are realizing that kayfabe is actually dead.
And I think our thing is that we all grew up and we had a slow transition into kayfabe, quote unquote, being dead.
Mm-hmm.
Even as kids, we had that slow transition. And I think the problem that you're having nowadays is that now, one, they're still believing in kayfabe.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is that is this issue of they're very jarred. They're not willing to accept that things happen. Look how many people, like an example is the Mandy Rose and Naomi storyline. You saw how many people got pissed off about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the newsflash, guys. If you are so cool with the Attitude Era, that was a typical Attitude Era storyline.
Exactly.
That happened all the time in the Attitude Era. And my thing with the fans is you need to... I'm not saying don't care about the product. But if you're going to care about the product, you kind of not have to give a shit about some things.
You have to not take it as seriously.
Take it as seriously. When we start being critical or something, we're looking at it from a more analytical standpoint or a production standpoint.
We're looking at how the storyline could have gone versus how it actually did go.
Right. And so there's a key difference there.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're seeing is it's just they can't let go of this fact that realistically they don't know how to. I like there was a guy on YouTube, and I don't know who the guy is. I've only seen this line that you're watching movies wrong.
Yeah.
I believe a large majority of the fan base is simply watching wrestling wrong.
They're not enjoying the storylines as they are meant to be enjoyed. They're enjoying the storylines as something that's real. Is what he's saying.
Right.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I was gonna say,
I'm not.
hold on a second.
Not talking about you again, JP.
Well, I thought you were there for a second.
Fuckhead.
No, but that's 100% right, because you have these new fans out there that come and watch the event and don't realize that it's storyline and entertainment.
Right.
And they're the ones that usually sit there and throw out, well, it's all fake anyway, so I don't see why I have to understand it. And it's like, well, dude, you watch movies and you understand movies. Why can't you understand wrestling? It's the same fucking thing.
The problem with today, as it was back in the day, is they focused on a combination of promo storyline and in-ring storyline. More or less today, they're more focused on what happens outside of the ring as far as promo goes. More so than they try to bring it to the ring, but it don't work. Because a lot of the guys don't have chemistry like they did back in the day.
And not to mention, it's not just the chemistry of in-ring with each other. It's just the chemistry of their own character with that person.
Well, and frankly, there's a little bit, I think Big Show said it best. There's a little bit too much camaraderie in the back. People are too nice to each other.
Yes. Yes,
People are not
too nice to each other, and the fact that you don't really have the Undertaker used to be the locker room general. He would be the one to keep everybody apart from each other and all of that.
right.
And back in the day, you had the heel locker rooms and you had the babyface locker rooms where you kept them apart from each other. And we don't really have that anymore. Now they get all dressed together.
Mm-hmm.
And the sad thing is that you'll never really get a return to kayfabe.
No. Kayfabe is dead.
Unfortunately, you're never going to because of the internet.
Right.
And shows like Total Bellas and Total Lita.
Oh God, let's not even get started on that. I don't have the patience.
I don't either. And frankly, the fact that they went to this is just childish.
Well, that's why I said that's again. It goes back to my deal of why I defend a lot of the shit that they did back then. It's because, by today's standards, is it messed up? Yeah, they shouldn't have done it. Okay, we've established that. The thing is, when you really break it down to the nitty gritty, I mean, bare bones, is it really that big of a deal?
As far as kayfabe, no.
As far as wrestling in general, the stuff that happened back then, and was it really that big of a deal? Was it that detrimental? Because considering what we got out of that.
No, but then again, there's my argument of yes, that happened in the past and we've moved on from them, but now they want to try and go back. No.
Right. And that's why I said there's a regression. And I would not be surprised if they continue on this regression that you'll start seeing bra and panties matches again. I know they said they would never do that, but mark my words, what's their famous phrase that they always use, especially when talking about something coming back?
Never say never.
Never say never.
WWE.
What?
I was going to say, anything can happen in the WWE, they also say.
That too, but there's always the never say never.
Never say never.
Anything can happen in the WWE?
That's what Vince always says.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it's one of the things he used when Owen Hart died.
Can we not get Becky in the fucking main event at WrestleMania? That'd be great.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So
if they do regress to the point of bra and panties matches again, there are going to be a lot of pissed off SJWs.
Right. Well, and then too, you got to think of it back then. Too, the demographic was very different back then.
Oh yeah, back in the day, it was more men watching than women.
Right, and now you're seeing more women watch the product, which is a good thing. I mean, that's the thing. Nobody's saying that it's a good thing that it's a bad thing that the women got more of a push, and that we are seeing some better storylines. the problem is that I think you're just it's becoming this deal where it's becoming too much about a political issue and not enough about the wrestling.
Exactly.
And that's why I defend the stuff that back then. Because they had some messed up crap, but it was about the wrestling at the end of the day.
And people need to realize that this is just for entertainment. It's not anything that's actually serious.
Right. Again, it goes back to my original point, is that they were doing stuff that every other TV show was doing. The difference with them is, it is a live performance, but when you get down to the nitty gritty, they weren't doing anything different than any other show that some still do to this day.
Exactly. Hell, they got away with more on Broadway.
True.
Hell, a good example, look how long fucking Jerry Springer was on the fucking air.
It still is.
It still is. And the shit that gets pulled with that. And you want to, and these fans, and fans want to come at me for saying that about bra and panty matches? It's like, get the fuck out of here. Or you're saying, it's like, come on. And so, my thing is, what will piss me off about this whole thing if they regress, it will mean Trish and Lita's feud was meant for nothing.
Exactly.
It was meant for nothing.
Exactly. Them main eventing Raw, Trish going through barking like a dog, Lita and Trish both going through the first ever tag team bra and panties match, and the fucking Lita having to go through that pregnancy story.
Well, and there's another thing that I always like to point that I think people don't point out either, or people somehow they conveniently forget this, is that 90% of those messed up storylines that we all refer to, if you remember right, the women usually got their revenge.
That's true.
Yeah.
And what happened at the end? The crowd cheered. The crowd cheered that they got their revenge. Look at what good example of that. The dog barking incident.
It ended with Trish
not giving Linda her medication, and therefore Linda coming out of that coma.
And that starting a feud between her and Stephanie McMahon.
Which was a good feud. Again, and that goes to my point. It was storyline.
Exactly.
And that's why I hate when people cherry pick singular moments, because they're taking a part of it that they wouldn't have done it, and they even said that they wouldn't have done it back if they could do it over again. The problem is they did it. The thing is that they did it, and it turned out to be a really good story.
Bobbitt, you have a voice. Use it.
Say something.
I can.
Dude, you're part of the show. You're the only one on fucking camera besides me.
Johnny will shut up for the rest of the show. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But I'm surprised nobody's brought up a live sex celebration yet between for Lita.
Well, we kind of did. The Matt Edge and Lita's.
No, actually, that was after, because that was Edge and John Cena.
But still, that's part of that fucking storyline.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But that segment was really in poor taste. Neither one of them wanted to do it, by the way.
What, Edge and Lita?
Nope. They did not want to do that segment, by the way. They want to bring their... Even though they did the storyline with Matt Hardy, bringing their sex life so much out in the middle of the fucking ring, not something that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But, again, they signed off on it, they did it, and it was one of the most watched segments in WWE history.
Because Lita ended up taking an AA.
that, and she ended up nip slipping.
Well, not only that, but like I can vouch for this because like the night that was going to air, a lot of us watched it, you know, just to see if we could see nudity.
Say it again. You watched it just to see nudity?
Just to see if you could see nudity.
Of course.
Yeah.
Which
Well, you
that
gotta think
was
how-
the
how
starting.
young-
That
how
was
young
the
I was,
start of
though.
clickbait.
It was.
WWE did clickbait before clickbait was a thing.
Exactly. And
They
Lita
did.
was the start of it.
They did clickbait before Sean's view was clickbait. I'm just kidding.
No, you want to see my dick?
See you, Paul. I'll be back. We're exclusive.
Ugh, I'm really not
Confirmed.
looking forward to them being in Chicago.
It is confirmed. Why does that? You know, why do I always get the distinct impression of Yogi Bear?
Yeah, boo-boo.
It's close.
Hey,
You want to see my dick?
It's between Yogi Bear and that fucking the guy from Caddyshack 2.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But yeah. Trish and Lita. It's a good feud. It had its downs. I mean, yeah, it's hard to talk about it, but if it wasn't for them two, we would not have the women's wrestling we do today, like I said at the beginning of the show. There's just no fucking way, and you can't tell me any fucking different.
No, I agree with that. I can completely agree with that.
And I'm not excluding Molly Holly. I'm not excluding any of the other women. It's just them two were at the forefront of the women's division.
They were the ones that pushed the women's division to be better than what it was.
Right.
And it was because of their own frustrations.
Frustration, you weren't frustrated.
Through their own frustrations of them not barely getting any time for anything.
Well, those two were the only two that did get any time.
Not at the beginning, though.
Who did what now?
Welcome back, Gina.
Thank you. That's the fastest I've ever read books in my life.
Gina, fast forward.
Right? Saying it. That's the fastest I've ever read The Cat in the Hat, anyway.
We're about ready to close up the show here, I think. An hour and 14-minute conversation out of just Trish and Lita. And a few
Right.
other topics thrown in on top. But you know
Roll
what?
over,
It
roll
all
over,
ties in.
roll over. You're almost there.
She is almost there. She's like halfway up to her belly.
Oh.
We'll move her away from the bar so it'll make it easier.
JP just sounds funny, like he's training a dog or something. Roll over, roll over.
Yeah.
Do it. Flip it.
She's just laughing at him.
No! I'm just kidding.
She's just laughing at him. But
Give your why don't we go?
I was just gonna do the round table for final thoughts here. Bobbit, why don't we start with you because you haven't been able to talk for most of the episode. Apparently, Wendy wanted to talk
Alrighty.
first, but now it's your turn, Bobbit.
Yeah, I know. That's all right. She can have the floor whenever she wants. My final thoughts are: it was one of those feuds that will always be remembered, especially with us like older wrestling fans. And I don't think anything's gonna top it, unless they actually have people that actually know what the fuck they're doing in the creative team.
Well, now they do with Bruce Pritchard, so.
This coming from somebody that thinks Alexa Bliss is the next.
Yeah, but they also have Dana Warrior though, so it's kind of
Yeah, hopefully she doesn't destroy it too much. Just saying. Trek, how about you?
Probably one of the best rivalries of the 90s, up there with Rock and Austin. And I mean, I still remember the night that she came back and had that phenomenal main event match with Trish. And we were all afraid. My friend Melanie and I were just afraid. We thought she broke her neck again. And it was just the culmination that you wanted to see these two, you know, beat the crap out of each other. But it was for a good reason. You wanted to see them top each other. It was
She
amazing.
actually did break her neck in that match. didn't know
Trek?
She didn't know it, but she did break her neck.
Yes, Wendy, you're right.
Hang on, I gotta say something here out fast.
Sure.
Trek, did you just really say 90s feuds and then Brock and Steve Austin?
No, I said Rock and Austin.
Okay, because it sounded like you said Brock. I'm like,
You're
wait,
stuck on
what?
that. I thought he said robberies, not rivalries.
I wouldn't go that far as to say that it was up there with Rock and Austin.
For the women, it was.
For the women, it was. But it
That's what I meant,
doesn't
yeah.
compare. It's small. I hate to say that because I'm going to get these women coming back at me saying, "Oh, you're just a chauvinistic pig." No, it's not. It's not what I'm. Comparing Rock and Austin to Lita and Trish is like comparing a hot dog to a mini wiener. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my God, JP, you made it worse.
You know all about the wieners. They're
Can I take a stab at it?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Johnny.
I think the reason why to JP's point that it's hard to compare it is because whether women like it or not, men can just do a little bit more when it comes to physicality.
Well, it depends on what kind of a woman. Because, like, I mean, China, she could do 90%.
Well,
like
but that is true. But also, when you look at it from a logical, from a realistic standpoint, China did, but also China had a lot of help doing that.
Yes.
And they had to help her do that because the reason why, if you look, there's plenty of videos out there. In fact, I can remember one. There was a video I saw where this really skinny guy, you wouldn't think compared to somebody like myself or JP or your typical bodybuilder, this guy was a beanpole. And he beat
cheeseburger?
And he needed a cheeseburger bad.
No. I mean, was it cheeseburger?
No.
Okay.
But he arm wrestled a woman that was very fit and very athletic. I mean, clearly, you could tell that she worked out. And he still beat her.
Yeah. See, I don't know though. The Jordan Grace, man.
But when because it goes down to this. If you take the fastest woman in the world and the fastest man in the world, the man is going to always win. And out because physically, he has a higher endurance. We're just men are naturally built for more endurance when it comes to athletics. And that's not a knock on women. That's just that's genetics. That's biological. So it's exactly why when you see a Money in the Bank match, what usually has more spots, the men or the women's?
I'm sorry, Wendy had me distracted.
I think with that question, of course now it's the men's, but I think like back in the day, it would maybe been a little bit of a different story because like the women these days, like especially in WWE, they're not allowed to take all that many bumps.
Well, but why is that?
Because a lot of them are small-statured women. But then again, you take a woman like fucking Jordan Grace, for example, and I've seen Jordan Grace beat the living shit out of grown men. And this is in the indies. Like, dude, this wasn't joking. This was actual physicality.
Well, and that's I'm not saying it doesn't always happen, but generally, when it comes to physicality, men are going to be able to do more than a woman.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, Jordan Grace, although I don't really know who you're talking about, is probably an exception to the rule.
Yeah,
and there's
fucking Rick Stackhouse. She looks like Big E.
There's always that's the thing. There's always the exception to the rule, but the rule remains the same.
Yeah.
And when you look at these women nowadays, they can't do as much. So that's why Trish and Lita, similar kind of build types.
Yeah.
Hey, so it's not a knock on them, but they do have that disadvantage. And there's no amount of SJW and there's no amount of fucking performance enhancement. There's no amount that will ever change that. And that's not necessary, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing, because then you can refine it to be good where they do thrive in.
Right.
So see, I'm not that fucking bad, you goddamn feminist.
Well, again, they're feminazis. They're not feminists. So.
No, I know.
Check her diaper. She might have peed. Gina, how about your final thoughts?
I don't know. I'm waiting for the women to come along that can wow me the way that Trish and Lita did, and it's going to be incredibly hard to do. Impossible, maybe even impossible, because you also got to remember that when Trish and Lita were doing this was innovative, and this was new, and this was fresh. I mean, we've been seeing women wrestling for a while now, so it's nothing new for us. So these women have the challenge of not only putting on a better match than Trish and Lita, but they have to find something new that they didn't do.
Both for women and the men.
Exactly, which is, now you're talking into the territory where like people are at risk of getting hurt. So I think that Trish and Lita are going to be one of those rivalries that I don't know if it's ever going to be broken. Or ever beat, I should say. Not only that, but they had the best chemistry with each other in the ring. Because they were best friends outside of the ring. Or, well, they weren't at first, but they grew to be.
Yeah, because they realized, that it was going to take both of them to skyrocket the company to where it is today.
Right, and that was another thing, like, that their bond that they have now, and that you could see, because their matches just got better and better as time went on, and you could tell that they were growing kind of closer and closer.
Mm-hmm.
And that bond was made over something that really doesn't exist in today's world. Because that bond was, okay, we have to show these people that we can do this. Women can do this. And yeah, they're still spewing, oh, women can do it, blah, blah, blah. Well, we know you can fucking do it. Now you got to show us something that we didn't know that you could do. And I don't know if they can do that without risking injury.
Yeah, about the only people that have that close of a friendship now is Becky and Charlotte.
Yeah. And I think that's why Becky and Charlotte, like, before Ronda came into the picture, I actually really liked the Becky and Charlotte feud that they had going on, because it was just those two, and they had such amazing ring chemistry together because they know each other so well outside of the ring.
Right.
So they were able to pretty much anticipate each other's moves and not necessarily block them, but they knew how to sell them. They knew how to deliver them.
Right. Deliver them. They can counter them at the right time.
Exactly. So yeah, Trish and Lita, not only storyline wise, but in ring, everything, like it's going to be, as I've repeated myself 5 times already, it's going to be nearly impossible. So that's my final thought.
And Alpha, no. Lana is not a feminazi. Lana is just a fucking idiot.
Yes.
Lana's a fucking salty bitch that actually thinks that she's cool because she admits that she's salty.
Right.
It's a muzzle.
It's
I'm
all
so
the people that sit there and attacked Aleister Black for his comment back to her
Oh my gosh.
that are feminazis.
Well, and the thing is, like, people are attacking him saying that he was body shaming. No, he wasn't. He was pointing out that her body is enhanced.
Exactly.
Anybody that wants to tell me that she doesn't have like a boob job or that she didn't get fucking lip injections is full of shit. Like,
Exactly.
come on.
Exactly. And I mean, and then it's also the fact that she's the one who sat there and called him ordinary and said he had to go get so many tattoos to fit in with the misfits. That just goes under the
Exactly.
radar.
Exactly. You know, but here's my advice to wrestling fans out there. If you want wrestling to be great again, you truly want wrestling to be great again, stop being such SJW fucking cunt bags. Because the more you cry out, and if your favorite wrestler loses a match, or if somebody gets injured in the ring and you want to cry for somebody's head, the more you do shit like that, the more WWE is going to tame their stuff down.
Exactly.
And I made mention of that, and I say this all the time. This is why I don't have a favorite wrestler. I am a fan of wrestling. I am not a fan of Becky Lynch. I am not a fan of Charlotte Flair. I'm a fan of all of them. I am a fan of wrestling. If I became, and I know if my favorite wrestler lost, I would be losing my shit, and it would take the fun out of the wrestling for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
That's
and you know,
why I don't have a favorite.
Even back in the day, I had my favorite wrestlers, but let's I didn't put as much focus. I mean, you thought about what was happening in the storyline, but you know, back in, I don't know, let's say 2000, when I was watching this, I wasn't sitting there going, okay, that happened, which means that the storyline's going to go this way, which I do now, but I'm also able to disconnect myself from doing that as well. Like if I find myself not being able to enjoy it anymore, I will stop my brain from thinking in the future of what they're going to do and just watch for now.
Right.
I agree, Wendy. I agree.
Yeah, we are up to the blowing bubbles phase now, so.
I love that phase. It's so freaking cute, but yet there's spit running down them all the time.
Yeah. And she likes to have her fingers in her mouth too when she's doing
Hey,
it. So it
JP
creates a
Loser,
fun
I'm in the
sound,
main
so.
event of Mania under not H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A.
Huh?
Said I can't wait to see that kid. Yay.
Oh, we just had a donation come in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's not your fault.
You're good.
That's why it didn't show up. All right, hold on one sec. I can fix that. Let's see here.
Heck, at this point, you might as well do Raging Ink.
At this point, yeah. Hold on one sec, folks.
What are you doing?
Going to Streamlabs.
I'll give my final thoughts.
There you go. There, now you're thinking. Hey, cooking with gas.
Oh god, here we go.
Nothing, and I pretty much have said it all fucking night. Nothing compares to Trish and Lita, and it is going. And Gina said it. It is going to be hard to top it. And no, Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda are not gonna fucking. They don't compare to Trish and Lita.
I think it's kind of unfair to even. I mean, it's not that they aren't good or anything, and it's not that they can't do stuff that's great, but it's kind of, they're on a different playing field.
Yep.
All right, here we go. I'm going to replay it there for you. Captain
Hey,
Fanta.
JP Loser, I'm in the main event of Mania under not H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A.
What the fuck did he say?
Hey, JP, I'm the main event of Mania and you're not. Ha 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 ha.
Fucking asshole.
I did it not show, though. I don't know.
This is not a big deal.
Oh, well. We'll figure it out and get it fixed.
Yeah. But again, it's not. Nothing compares. Nothing ever will. Not in my opinion, unless they go away from forcing storylines. Because that feud to me happened naturally. Like a lot of feuds that happen naturally. Everything is forced today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everything is so incredibly scripted. Like back then, they did it. They did it back then, kind of like how like the Young Bucks or Cody Rhodes or any of those guys. They do it now. It was bullet points. You had your bullet points that you wanted to make sure that you covered in the promo, but otherwise you were free to kind of say it however you wanted to say it, as long as you got the point across.
Right.
And now everything is so incredibly scripted. They have to remember word for word. And then you find him like Batista on Monday where he forgets the fucking script. And he comes out and for like 10 seconds, he's just sitting there with the microphone in his face with this like, oh shit look on his face. And then all of a sudden he's, give me what I want. Like, I know that he messed up on that one because there's no way that they were going to write the script to where he said the same shit on repeat so many times.
There's no way. There's no way.
But that's what I'm talking about. You know, I mean, even a seasoned veteran of not only the wrestling business but also acting, he even forgets his lines. And then look what happened. Like, he came out and he looked like a fucking idiot.
Well, look at that video that somebody sat there and made up of between him
Spice
and
Girls.
Triple H and the Spice Girls.
That was the fucking best. I died.
I nearly peed my pants laughing at that video.
Yes.
Well, even The Rock has needed crib notes in the past when he was talking to John Cena. He had them written on his arm.
Yeah.
It's also, it comes down to also that
What the fuck, dude?
things.
The fuck, calm the fuck down.
She's hungry, so she can't. Oh, she's laughing at me. Put her in her swing.
Okay.
Like you tell me all the time.
You're gonna have to listen to her cry.
I'm not the one who bitches about it.
Ready, Marcus? Get set, go.
Ooh.
Yeah, there she goes. All right. So my final thoughts on this whole thing is, again, you're not going to see anything that's going to be repeated that they did, that you're going to get anything new out of these women now. You're not going to at all. It's not going to happen. And the fact that the creative team is now sitting there trying to book the men's storylines from the Attitude era for the women of today just kind of shows you that they've kind of run out of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really nothing left for these women of today to do.
Well, not just the women, but the men as well. I mean, Kofi Kingston, look what they're doing to him. They're doing the Daniel Bryan story.
Right.
But they're using Daniel Bryan as the villain this time.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense because he's not a very good villain.
Exactly.
Because as friends of the show, Dory said many times, we have seen you on Total Bellas and Total Divas. Stop it.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not a very good heel. He never was a very good heel. Daniel Bryan, yes.
Yeah.
He just does not have that mean character within him.
No, and I mean, when you look at him, and he looks like a mixture between the homeless guy down the street and Santa Claus. I mean, come on, how serious can you really take the guy?
He's a silly little vegan.
He is. I mean, yes, they're using that part of his life to try and push it and make him like the SJW vegans that everybody wants to shoot. Helps, but it makes it more of an annoyance rather than a villain.
There was a split second that I was kind of liking what they were doing with him, but that I do have to admit that I like the storyline with Kofi.
Right.
But it's not because it's the Daniel Bryan storyline. It's because it's Kofi.
Right.
You know, Kofi is what is making that storyline, and Big E and Xavier Woods are like these amazing background, like, supporting actors in it. You know, like.
Right.
Exactly, and frankly, the fans sitting there screaming and crying about it right now. Pay attention to me right now, people. This is what the WWE wants you to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they want you to do. This is the reaction they wanted out of the fans. So that they could sit there and make it seem like you're getting what you want. When in reality, it was their plan all along.
Hey, what's going on?
Exactly.
I'm actually going to laugh if Kofi doesn't win next week.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, people would lose their shit. But I think that they put themselves in a storyline right now where that Kofi almost has to win because otherwise, you and I'm not saying that I'm going to be doing this. I think that it's bullshit that people would do this, but you know that people are going to pull the race card if they don't push
But
this.
then us smart fans that have been watching for a while can sit there and go, Booker T, Naomi,
Ron Simmons.
Ron Simmons, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
The first black AWA champion.
WCW.
WCW, but
Exactly. I mean, in WCW, they let him go with the N word and all that shit, you know. I mean,
Exactly.
But it's
Mark Henry.
that's why I was like, when they kickstarted this Kofi thing, I'm like, oh god, no. Like I even told you guys, I'm like, they're starting this during Black History Month, so you kind of know where it's going because I think we were while watching, we were live one night and we were watching. And like literally, they showed Kofi, and then right after that, they showed a Black History Month commercial, which is amazing. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying if they don't do it now, then that's going to be one of those controversial things that comes up, and you know it will.
It always does.
No,
it always does. I mean, Alberto Del Rio was the one who started that whole thing because he sat there and oh, they didn't treat me right because I was Mexican, motherfucker. You held the big gold belt for over a month.
Not only that, but Eddie Guerrero is like one of WWE's golden childs. Like,
exactly.
The WWE loved him. Rey Mysterio, another golden child of WWE. They're both beloved in that company. So for you to say, "Well, I'm Mexican, so they hate me," fuck you. You're just a douchebag. Get out of here.
Exactly. You're just a piece of shit that they're wiping off the bottom of their boot.
Alberto Del Rio is to wrestling what a certain someone is to this community.
Yeah, that's about right.
Dare I say cancer?
Yeah, that works. And more than likely, it's pancreatic cancer, which is the most aggressive cancer out there.
Why couldn't Alberto Del Rio get leukemia and not
Instead
Roman?
Of Roman?
I don't.
Oh
wish,
my God! I don't wish
leukemia on anybody.
Exactly.
But...
That's what I was just gonna say. Like that's a little far, but
Alberto Del Rio.
Okay. Just to clarify, I'm Johnny fucking Sinister. The name literally says it all.
Don't add him, folks. Don't add him.
Well, you might as well associate asshole and Johnny Ray together because they both go together.
At this point, yeah.
The views of Johnny Ray are not of that of this show.
You literally need to put that. I swear to God, you almost have to put that disclaimer.
We just may have to make that another shirt.
right.
The views of Johnny Ray Sinister are not the views of the Cold Bone Show.
I come with my own parental advisory.
Yeah.
I am the trigger warning.
Pretty much. Difference is when it comes to SJW shit, we usually agree with you.
Johnny Sinister is going to be on the show. You have been warned.
Put the wife and the kid to bed and get ready for a ride.
Basically.
Okay, that just sounds like he's a hooker.
Well,
this show, he could be.
That wouldn't be the first time. No.
All right, folks.
No, I can't really.
Oh, God.
I think we could.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've officially started Raging Inc. now.
Well, we can just switch it over now. I'm just kidding. I am actually pretty exhausted because we had a lot of trouble getting Wendy to sleep last night, and an hour after we got her to sleep, she woke up again.
Oh
no.
Yeah, and then woke up again at 5:30 and didn't go back to sleep until 6:30. In which case, his alarm started going off, so I couldn't go to bed until he left. In which case, she then woke up again.
Damn you, JP! Shame on you.
Sorry, I had to work. Well, that's your fault. You did it.
But I am utterly exhausted, so I'm going to end the show here.
Thanks for everybody for being here.
Yeah, it's about
Thanks
time we
for
got
having
you
me on.
in on this episode.
Yeah. I was hoping to get in here sooner. I didn't know what time you guys were starting this one, but
Typically, we start this at 6:30, just like everything else. So,
okay.
so now you know.
Right now I know. Now I know to start supper way earlier next time.
And knowing is
No
half
one's
the battle.
For some reason, you will not
Exactly.
from me.
Trek.
So on that note, folks, we'll end the show here, and we will see you tomorrow on Bobbitt's channel for This Week in Wrestling, and we're gonna have quite a bit to talk about. And it's not just gonna be WWE related. Just to give you a little heads up there, folks. So everybody have a good night, and we shall see you tomorrow again on Bobbitt's channel.
Don't do math.
Oh my God, when do you making my ovaries jump? It's not even funny.